We have a lot of things. We've done, I think, more than anybody in 3 years. And now, you know, with regulation, tax cuts, and so many other things, we've rebuilt our military. $2.5 trillion on the military, but we have a military like we have never had before. We're going to be doing a middle-class tax cut, a very big one. We're going to be doing that. We have to win the House, and I think we can. I think we will win the House. I think the whole hoax with the impeachment hoax, I call it, I think that it really helps us in terms of the House.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. That is President Donald Trump talking with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business as we speak. Good morning to you. If you did not stay up past midnight, you missed the great windup of the first long, boring day of impeachment, which, as I predicted in the Washington Post 4 days ago, would be long and boring for every single person involved. And it was, and which in the Washington Post today, on the very front page, on the landing page, you can go read my column about how this is damaging the presidency. And I'll bet that most Republicans and maybe some Democrats, after yesterday's charade by the Democrats, agree with that. But let me take you to the part you didn't see if you went to bed before 12:30 a.m. Jerry Nadler, the redoubtable Democrat from Manhattan, who is the least competent of the House managers. And that's saying a lot because Adam Schiff is involved. Schiff is competent. He's just not honest. Jerry Nadler got up and said this, cut number 25.
I am struck by what we have heard from the President's counsel so far tonight. They complain about process, but they do not seriously contest any of the allegations against the President. They insist that the President has done nothing wrong, but they refuse to allow the evidence and hear from the witnesses. They will not permit the American people to hear from the witnesses. And they lie. And lie, and lie, and lie. And the President sometimes relies on a theory of absolute immunity that says that he can order anybody in the executive branch not to testify to the House or the Senate or to a court. Now, obviously, this is ridiculous. It's been flatly rejected by every federal court to consider the idea. It's embarrassing the President's counsels would talk about this today.
Then Pat Cipollone stood up and went with cut 26.
Let me read you a quote from Mr. Nadler, not so long ago. The effect of impeachment is to overturn the popular will of the voters. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties and opposed by the other. Such an impeachment would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. Well, you've just seen it for yourself. What happened, Mr. Nadler? What happened? The American people pay their salaries, and they're here to take away their vote. They're here to take away their voice. They've come here and they've attacked every institution of our government. They have attacked the president, the executive branch. They have attacked the judicial branch. They say they don't have time for courts. They have attacked the United States Senate repeatedly. It's about time we bring this power trip in for a landing.
Let's go to Jerry Nadler gets up and responds, cut number 27.
It is beyond belief that the President claims monarchical powers. I can do whatever I want under Article 2, says he, and then acts on that. Defies everything. Defies the law to withhold aid from Ukraine. Defies the law in a dozen different directions all the time. And lies about it all the time. And says to Mr. Cipollone here to lie about it.
Oh, so just call Cipollone a liar. He did that twice, and then the Chief Justice steps in, cut 28.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body. One reason it has earned that title is because its members avoid speaking in a manner and using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. In the 1905 Swain trial, a senator objected when one of the managers used the word pettifogging, and the presiding officer said the word ought not to have been used. I don't think we need to aspire to that high a standard, but I do think those addressing the Senate should remember where they are.
That was a slap at Nadler, even though he said it was directed equally at the president's lawyers, but it was Nadler who called everyone liar. He also said it was treasonous not to allow Bolton to testify. Treacherous, excuse me, not treasonous, treacherous. The president just spoke to Maria Bartiromo about impeachment. Let's play that cut.
President, I couldn't believe that the impeachment was still going on as we were getting here this morning. Your critics are up to the same. They say that Pat Cipollone is now a material witness. They're accusing McConnell of colluding with you to cover a crime. Are you concerned about getting a fair trial?
These people are crazy. They have gone totally nuts. McConnell, they say things about him with Russia. Jill Stein, now I don't know Jill Stein, Green Party. They said Jill Stein is an agent of Russia. Then they said Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know her, but I know one thing. She's not an agent of Russia, but they said she was an agent of Russia. That's what they said about me. These people are crazy. They've gone nuts, and they've gone far left. Nancy is a woman who, I call her Nervous Nancy for a reason. She doesn't know what the hell's happening. She's lost her party. She didn't want to do this. And we're doing very well. Look, I always say, very simple, read the transcripts. And then on top of reading the transcripts, speak to the president of Ukraine or the foreign minister who say nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Remember this, they got their money and they got it early. But I want to make sure also, in addition to collusion, there's something else I'm always stressing. Why isn't Germany and France and UK and all these other countries in Europe that are much more affected than us, why aren't they paying something?
All right, let's skip down to the president talking with Joe Kernan an hour ago about Wuhan coronavirus and whether or not it's a threat. It has now killed 9 people in China, 600 cases, cut number 29. Joe Kernan of CNBC talking with the president.
Well, you know what's going on back at home. It's all impeachment. All the time. Did you watch any of it?
I did. I watched.
What did you make of it yesterday?
And I had a busy day yesterday, as you know. You were there. And we had the speech, and we had lots of meetings with different leaders, including Pakistan.
Stop. Go back and play Joe Kernan on coronavirus first.
Things. The CDC has identified a case of coronavirus in Washington State, the Wuhan strain of this. If you remember SARS, that affected GDP, travel-related effects. Have you been briefed by the CDC?
I have.
Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
Okay.
Going to be just fine. Then he went back to impeachment with Joe. Let's play that clip, which we started a little bit earlier.
Well, you know what's going on back at home. It's all impeachment all the time. Did you watch any of it?
I did. I watched.
What did you make of it yesterday?
And I had a busy day yesterday, as you know. You were there. And we had the speech, and we had lots of meetings with different leaders, including Pakistan and other countries, in addition to businessmen all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get to see some of it. It's a hoax. It's a total hoax.
How do you think
it was a perfect conversation. I think the team was really good, and the facts are all on our side. The Republican Party has never been this unified. You saw that 195 to nothing, I guess, twice. In fact, we got 3 Democrats voting for us. That was with the House.
Do you think there'll be witnesses, Mr. President? Or
I really don't know. I think that if everybody tells the truth, it's perfect. But all you have to do is read the transcript. If you take a look at the transcript, and it's really 2 transcripts. It's, I had a first call, which was perfect, and I had a second call, which was perfect. Do you notice they don't mention the calls, though? They never mention the calls. They talk about everything but the calls. All they have to do is read the transcripts. I put it out all the time. The other thing is, speak to the president of Ukraine. He's been great, I have to tell you. And his foreign minister's been great.
Right.
They constantly say there was no pressure. They don't even know what we're doing. They think it's crazy. So they got the money. In fact, they got it very early. President Obama gave them nothing. He gave them pillows and sheets and things like that, and I gave them tank busters. No, it's a disgraceful hoax.
Well,
but we do it.
We had a 4-hour show yesterday.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere, America. Democrats embarrassed themselves yesterday. This is going to go on a couple of weeks, but luckily the president says the Wuhan coronavirus is contained. That's good to know. The CDC is on the case. Markets have stabilized in the East, and I will tell you about that when we come back for segment 2 and hour 1 of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
is the best outcome a quick dismissal, or is the best outcome to get the witnesses, get the vote for witnesses, and then be acquitted by the American people?
I guess acquittal fairly quickly. These people are liars. They're horrible. I watched this guy, Shifty Schiff. I watched him for a little while. So yesterday I had meetings all over the place. But in between meetings, I get to see, and I watch his lies. I watch where they've actually played a rerun, which they shouldn't even do. It was so bad, where he goes before Congress and he makes a statement that I made, and it was a total fraud. I never made it.
He made it up.
That's why I released the conversation, because if I didn't release it, people would have said that I made the statement that he made. This guy's a fraud. He's a corrupt politician.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That's the President of the United States talking as we speak with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business Channel. Let's check on the markets, brought to you by Birch Gold. Every single day they bring the first market report to you. Birch Gold is who I trust when I buy gold. I did it in December. You might be wanting to do it now because of instability in the market. But whatever you're doing, you should diversify a portion of your IRA and your 401k into precious metals. I don't know if it's 10% or 15% or 20%. Talk to the people at Birch Gold and get a free information on converting your eligible IRA or 401k into the physical precious metal depository that they maintain. To discover more about this, you go to hughgold.com. That's hughgold.com, or call 800-434-GOLD. If you're actually buying physical gold, and I don't recommend pneumonistics, I'm not one of those people, but if you want some maple leaves, some American Eagles, do it through Birch Gold. Minimum purchase is $5,000. 800-434-GOLD. They'll ship it direct to you. 800-434-GOLD. Overnight, markets stabilized in Asia after a disastrous Tuesday. On Wednesday, they got back into order. The China Shanghai Composite was last up 0.4%. It had been down as much as another 1%. The day before it was down almost 3%. But Shanghai eventually recovered its losses because China is very, very vulnerable to the spread of the Wuhan coronavirus than other parts of Asia, according to Jeffrey Halley, a senior market analyst for Asia Pacific at OANA. And Chinese airline stocks recorded steep losses. They bounced back a little bit. How about our market? Yesterday, we caught the Asian flu, just like the first Wuhan coronavirus arrived in the United States. In Washington State, the Dow was down 152 points. The NASDAQ was down 18. The S&P was down 8. But this morning, the S&P is up 12.5 points. The NASDAQ is up 57, and the Dow is up 84 points early in the pre-market trading. I think a lot of this is probably Amazon related, which reports next week. And I always disclose I own Amazon, but it is a proxy for the tech sector, though it lagged a little bit behind the tech sector in 2019. Yesterday, Amazon went up $27. This morning, it's up another 10 in pre-market trading. There were some big option trades that are bullish on Amazon overnight. So I think it reflects that. We'll watch that closely today. But President said coronavirus is contained in the United States. Good. I'm glad they're on that. Here's the deal. The 10-year Treasury went down to 1.77. Gold is at 15.58 and light crude at 58 this morning. Birch Gold Group, that's where you go to check out on whether or not you need to move some of your IRA to a 401k backed by precious metals or an IRA backed by precious metals. Go to hughgold.com, 800-434-GOLD. I want to go and play a little bit of Pat Philbin, Deputy White House Counsel, opening statement yesterday, cut number 15.
It's remarkable that after taking the action of the breathtaking gravity of voting to impeach the duly elected President of the United States, and after saying for weeks that they had overwhelming evidence to support their case, the first thing that the House managers have done upon arriving finally in this chamber after waiting for 33 days is to say, well, actually, we need more evidence. We're not ready to present our case. We need to have subpoenas and we need to do more discovery because we don't have the evidence we need to support our case. This is stunning. It's a stunning admission of the inadequate and broken process that the House Democrats ran in this impeachment inquiry that failed to compile a record to support their charges. It's stunning that they don't have the evidence they need to present their case and that they don't really have a case.
Pat Philbin was
If a
terrific. It's the only time I live tweeted yesterday. He's the deputy counsel to the president. He demolished the Democrats. They have no case. They have no evidence. They need to try and put it on now. I hope the Senate doesn't agree. I'm coming right back with Admiral Stavridis. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Good morning to you. I'm taking a brief break from impeachment news and Wuhan coronavirus updates to talk with my guest, Admiral James Stavridis, retired United States Navy, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, to talk with him about a couple subjects before returning to our typical strategery. Good morning, Admiral.
Good morning, Hugh.
I am curious. I think the decision to name the next American aircraft carrier for Dorie Miller, Navy Cross recipient, African-American enlisted man who was serving aboard the West Virginia on the day of December 7th, is a grand idea. What do you think of it?
It's 100% a grand idea, and I'll give you three quick reasons. One is Dorie Miller himself, who comes from a very hard-scrabble background. He's the original boy named Sue. You know, his name is Doris.
Yes.
Because his family wanted a girl and thought he was going to be a girl. He turns out to be a big, strong guy, but he's got to kind of push back on all that. He becomes an expert boxer. Did you know that? He was the boxing champion of the Pacific Fleet. Yeah.
I did not.
And, yeah, so just him as overcoming a lot of challenges in his life, it's very inspirational. Number two, the obvious thing is the Medal of Honor piece of this, where he is a Navy steward, which means his job is basically to be a cook, to wash and clean uniforms, to shine shoes for the officers. Yet when the attack happens, without any technical knowledge, he jumps on an anti-aircraft gun, probably shoots down a Japanese Zero, and just inspires the crew around him. So an extraordinary, should have been a Medal of Honor, but in those days, the highest he was going to get as an African-American, Navy Cross, an amazing single act of courage. And then third and finally, it's the inspiration of the Navy overcoming its institutional racism, let's be honest, in the pre-World War era. Now he's going to be a Navy nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. I'll close by saying a nuclear aircraft carrier, and you know this, is 7 acres of sovereign territory on that flight deck. It goes where it wants on the high seas. It's the ultimate instrument of American power. I'm really proud of my Navy for this one.
Now, Acting Secretary Mollie announced this at the Arizona on Martin Luther King Day, although word had leaked a little bit earlier than that. And I think it's terrific. I think it's grand. I also wonder whether it breaks the precedent of presidents being named, carriers being named for presidents going forward. What do you think, Admiral?
I think it won't completely break that apart. And if you look at our carriers today, the majority are named for American presidents: Washington, Lincoln, Truman, Ford, Reagan, etc.
Roosevelt,
Roosevelt. But we've always had carriers that were also named for famous battles. Some historically carry the names back to the 6 original American frigates, so Constitution, Enterprise, etc. So I think there'll be 1 or 2 that reach out and say something very special beyond presidents. I do think it's a pretty good tradition to name those carriers after presidents, but in this case, Dorie Miller just really felt good, I think, across the entire spectrum for everybody.
Now, let me turn to another thing the acting secretary did, which was to convene an off-site meeting in Annapolis a week ago. And they came away committed publicly to 355 ships. And then the CNO went out and he laid out the budget, the top line that they need to get to that, which I've been arguing for 3 years. What did you make of that exercise and that proposed budget, which requires, if we are serious about this, a significant top line increase in spending for the Navy?
Let me start with Acting Secretary Mollie, who I've known for years and has been just a quiet, steady, smart force inside the Navy, not only on the issue that we're discussing this morning, the top line and the number of ships, but also on educating the Navy, on creating a strategy for the Navy. And in the brief period he's been the acting secretary, he's published a whole series of new vectors for the Navy. And I'm extremely impressed with what he's doing generally. Let's add to that brand new CNO, Admiral Mike Gilday, who is one of the most cerebral officers we've had in that position. steady and smart and very clear-eyed. He is the embodiment of Colin Powell's old line that you can get anything done in Washington if you're willing not to get credit for it. He's not about himself. So when you put those two together, a lot of brain power, a lot of low-key leadership, I feel very good about where this is going to go. And indeed, the 355 number is crucial. I think you can debate whether or not you ought to be able to count some type of high-tech unmanned ship in that or not. But I think that tracks are being laid down. The key, Hugh, is going to be building the ships, but also putting enough funding into the budget to maintain them, the so-called readiness question. So that's where you have it. You have Mosley pushing the ship numbers and the top line, and C&O Gilday on the maintenance and the readiness side. That's a very good combination for the Navy right now.
Now, I want to switch over to the fact we're a few days out from the back and forth with Iran, which began with their attack on our base, killing an American contractor and wounding some soldiers, followed by our strike on Hezbollah Iraq division, killing 24 of their warriors, followed by their attack on our embassy, followed by our killing of Soleimani, followed by their volleys of ballistic missiles at Al-Assad Air Force Base. What do you think? Where are we right now with the Islamic Republic of Iran as you judge it, Admiral? And what are you expecting over the next few days, weeks, months?
We are right back where we were before the sequence you described, with one important and positive difference, and that is the removal of General Soleimani. He was highly capable, very crafty, very inspirational within the Islamic Republic of Iran, and now that chess piece is off the board. So we're right back where we were, but the Iranians are wounded by the loss of Soleimani, and secondly, they're wounded in the court of international opinion by this blunder of shooting down, tragic blunder of shooting down this Ukrainian airliner. So the Iranians are diminished. Their economy continues to bleed altitude if they were an airplane. And the onus at this point, I think, is on the Europeans. The Europeans are kind of the swing voters between the United States, which is implacably opposed to Iran, and the Iranians, who are going to continue to push around the region in all the ways that have caused us to be concerned about them. And, by the way, are, in fact, by their own announcements, are now returning to enrichment of uranium. Who's kind of in the middle there? It's the Europeans, who so far have been trying to keep pumping oxygen into this dying nuclear deal. They need to walk away from the nuclear deal, align with the United States, and I think that gives you the political pressure. And at that stage, the Iranians are going to have to wake up and drink the tea and say, okay, we're going to have to get back to the negotiating table. I kind of think that's how this plays out over the course of this year. I'll close by saying the president doesn't want to start a war here. So there will be, I think, some room for the United States to maneuver, assuming the Europeans come our way. So the administration correctly is focusing on getting the Europeans where they need to be. Then I think we can go back to Iran and say, game over. Let's get back to the negotiating table. That's how we avoid a war.
Now, Admiral, I want to close by going to the arrival in the United States of the Wuhan coronavirus. And I pray it's one case, not many cases. I hope they've called Ron Klain, President Obama's point man on Ebola. But what, from your position as a strategist, is the potential of pandemic in China? They're up to 900 cases. 9 deaths and 600 cases. It's jumped to South Korea, the United States, Japan. It's not a problem, the president said this morning to Joe Kernan. I just wonder what thoughts you have on the prospect of pandemic, which eventually will return. That's why I always bring it up. We had the Spanish flu in 1918 to 1920. It eventually will come back. What's your thought on strategic consequence of this?
There is no question we will face a pandemic globally sometime in the coming decade or so. And the evidence, and you know this is human history, despite all the advances in medicine that have been remarkable, about every 100 to 200 years a pandemic occurs. There's no reason to think that's going to have suddenly changed. And I'd encourage everybody to go back and just Google Spanish flu, Spanish influenza. It infected 40% of the world's population with a mortality rate of 20%. In today's numbers, that would kill near 1 billion people. So we ought to be very concerned about this. And if you look at the faces of the medical professionals, the CDC professionals, as they come on air and talk about it, they are deeply concerned, and I am too. This could be the biggest story of 2020. Let's hope not. Ebola was contained largely, although it killed thousands in East Africa. I think we can get our arms around this is the bottom line. And here's the advantage of the fact that it's coming out of China, is that it's an authoritarian country. Normally, I'm not in favor, as you know, of authoritarian countries. But if you have to have a pandemic start somewhere, go for an authoritarian country because they can ruthlessly crack down, shut down society, tell everyone to go inside, keep everybody at home, ruthlessly quarantine. So let's hope China can get its arms around it. What we need to do here is, A, be aware of the threat, B, put national resources against it immediately, and C, when we see individuals, they do need to be ruthlessly quarantined at this stage of the pandemic. So
now, Admiral, I also, very quickly, the good difference between SARS and MERS is that China is transparent this time. They were not the last time. I think that's a major advantage, isn't it?
It is. And again, what you want is to have a place of a pandemic is a capable society, China, check, an authoritarian society, China, check, and transparency where they are sharing with the world. So far, check. I think we're going to get our hands around this one, but pandemics are going to be a serious issue in this decade. Watch for that one.
I hope we're not talking about this next week, but I suspect we will be, Admiral. Thank you for joining me, as always, early in the morning. I appreciate it so much. Admiral James Stavridis. I want you now to join me, America. Time to do my relieffactor.com. There it is. You can hear it. If you're following on Univision, which is back up and working, or Town Hall TV, there's my relieffactor.com, brought to you by Pete and Seth Talbot and the wonderful people up in Washington State who produce the very best supplements in the world. Relieffactor.com. With my lukewarm coffee and my Stone Cold Bagel right there. I'm showing you my Stone Cold Bagel, my lukewarm coffee, and my relieffactor.com. It's the only thing I really like on my desk in the studio in the morning. But I need my Icarian Curcumin Resveratrol and Omega. I take it every morning the first hour. And I remind the commuters who are leaving in my second and third hour, take it too. Relieffactor.com. We're in the relieffactor.com studio for a reason. They invest heavily in smart people like you who are listening to this program. Join the tens of thousands of people like me who take it every single morning and make your life a little bit easier. Support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that dog aging, exercise, and commuting. ReliefFactor.com. Coming right back, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
it's not ending. Al Green said, look, if we don't get him this time, we'll keep going. Maxine Waters said the same thing. We'll try to impeach him again. How are you going to deal with this for the rest of your presidency, that they're constantly trying to take you down?
So I think most people are now agreeing nobody's done so much as I've done in the first 3 years of a presidency. I don't think when you look at regulations, tax cuts, rebuilding the military, taking care of the vets, right to try is such a big deal. So many things I've done. Nobody's done anything like it. You look at what we're doing on the environment. We're doing great on the environment. You know, people don't want to talk about it. But nobody's done what we've done. And that's despite having this constant harangue. I saw Maxine Waters, what she said. I saw this guy Green. He said, we have to impeach him because we can't beat him. He said, we can't beat him. We have to impeach him. It's the only way we're going to win. Can you imagine? This is what I have. This is what I have.
That is what he has. That's President Donald Trump talking with Maria Bartiromo this morning on Fox Business Channel. I have a new column at the Washington Post. It's on the landing page if you go to WashingtonPost.com and just scroll down. Or you can listen to me read it to you right now. It was written after watching hours and hours of the absurdity of the House managers' arguments and the withering rebuttal by Pat Cipollone, Jay Sekulow, and Deputy Counsel Philbin. I wrote, and it's on the front page of the Post. I encourage you to send it everywhere. There are 1,000 comments from the nutters, but don't worry about those. This is what the real story is. Every decision is precedent. That which gets rewarded gets repeated. Law students should know these basic rules of the U.S. legal system and any common law system. That which has gone before inevitably is used to argue for or against what comes next. And that argument or tactic that has successfully persuaded a court in the past is likely to be urged on courts of today as precedent that binds its action. Both rules should be uppermost in senators' minds as they consider the presentations of the House Democrats and President Trump's legal team. Having reviewed the House manager's trial brief and that submitted by the president's legal team, I believe anything other than a rapid acquittal will be deeply damaging to the presidency. It will not injure this president, Donald Trump, at all to have witnesses in weeks and weeks of proceedings. It will damage the presidency. If the purely partisan and reckless maneuvering of House Democrats receive more than it deserves, rapid disposition with a strong dose of senatorial scorn, future presidents, at least those who face House majorities from the opposite party, can look forward to the impeachification of all political disputes down the road. The president's lawyers know that this is the strongest argument even for senators who most dislike Trump, whether Republican or Democrat. If senators care about the Constitution, they have to think not in terms of the next 100 hours or 100 days, but of the next 100 years. And they have to consider that it is not the other party that might be gored, but their own. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell warned then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid that the latter would rue the day he destroyed the judicial filibuster for nominees to the federal bench. Whether Reid ever admits it, Trump's 2 appointees to the Supreme Court, his 50 appointees to the Federal Circuit Court, and 133 to the district courts are a stark reminders of the cost of short-term thinking. Senators must dwell on the what-ifs that lie down the road. I think everyone in the chamber hopes that the Republic endures another 2 centuries at least. Political combat, though, has been continually escalating long before Trump became president. But this attempt to flood the zone with new charges and witnesses follows by less than 2 years the outrageous late-in-the-process attacks on Justice Brett Kavanaugh in the closing days of his confirmation. Now in our politics, even that which almost gets rewarded is being repeated. I know that the pressures from the left wing weigh very heavily on Democratic senators, but some of those Democratic senators need to find the courage to speak out about the dangerous precedents that threaten to be created in the next few days. Certainly, every Republican senator should do so. Armed with footnote 565 of the president's trial brief, senators can quickly dismiss the idea of the necessity of new witnesses. In that footnote are citations to early press accounts of Ukrainian conduct that was indeed interference in our 2016 election, though nothing on the scale of the Russian attempt to sow discord in our politics. These accounts include stories from Politico, the Financial Times, and the New York Times, and they reveal a predicate for the president's concern over some Ukrainians' conduct in 2016. There is therefore no doubt that a responsible president would request, if not demand, an inquiry by Ukrainian President Zelensky. The second article of impeachment is even more dangerous than the first. It would deprive the executive of Its Article 2 status is a separate but equal branch and would oblige future presidents to yield their rights and privileges no matter how specious the claims against him or her, or how intrusive the inquiries into the privileged communications or into matters of national security. Whatever one thinks of the first article of impeachment, and it takes partisan blinders to think much of it at all, it is constitutional ignorance to credit the second article with any merit whatsoever. Both will do damage to the presidency every second that they are infused with any sort of credibility. The left is full of ominous warnings that history is watching. In fact, it will record only outcomes and brave votes from electorally endangered senators who would rather side with future presidents and then the lasting and necessary separation of powers than seek the fleeting approval of media elites. That's my Washington Post column on yesterday's proceedings. It's on the front page of the Washington Post landing page right now. Send it to your friends, send it to your senators, and pray that this gets over in a hurry because we got serious business to talk about, which I'll be covering when we come back in hour 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening in the ReliefFactor.com studio inside a frozen beltway. It's really chilly. I mean, it's not Minnesota cold chilly, but it's 20 degrees or so. It's just not a good day to be out taking a morning run. Many of you probably went to bed before the most interesting part of yesterday's very boring, very long day occurred. It was a four-part act after midnight, which I want to begin with because the president won the day yesterday. His legal team crushed Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was found to have distorted, by the way, text messages from Lev Parnas, their new star witness, who replaces their old star witnesses, which replaced the inquiry into the Soviet, the Russian charge, which replaced their generalized hatred of Trump. It was a rout, actually, of the House managers, and a series of 12 votes that were strictly on partisan lines. And we are where Mitch McConnell wanted them to be after minor tweaks to the rules. Yesterday, there will be 3 days of presentations by Democrats, today, tomorrow, and Friday, I guess, and then 3 days by the president's defenders, probably Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. Then they'll move to whether or not witnesses will be allowed or subpoenas given, and we'll see what happens at that point. Here's the key exchange, though. When Jerry Nadler just lost it, Pat Cipollone rebuked him. Nadler lost it some more, and the Chief Justice intervened. Let's start with Jerry Nadler. Cut number 25. They're talking about whether or not to let Bolton testify. That's the motion on the floor. It would be defeated by a 53-47 vote. At this stage, he might be required to testify later. He'll still have his executive privilege. But here is Congressman Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee and the least competent of the 7 House managers. Cut number 25.
I am struck by what we have heard from the President's counsel so far tonight. They complain about process, but they do not seriously contest any of the allegations against the President. They insist that the President has done nothing wrong, but they refuse to allow the evidence and hear from the witnesses. They will not permit the American people to hear from the witnesses. And they lie, and lie, and lie, and lie. And the President sometimes relies on a theory of absolute immunity that says that he can order
Stop
anybody
it right
in the executive.
there. They lie, they lie, they lie. Pat Cipollone, the president's White House counsel, rises. Cut number 26.
Now, let me read you a quote from Mr. Nadler not so long ago. The effect of impeachment is to overturn the popular will of the voters. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment, or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties and opposed by the other. Such an impeachment would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. Well, you've just seen it for yourself. What happened, Mr. Nadler? What happened? The American people pay their salaries, and they're here to take away their vote. They're here to take away their voice. They've come here and they've attacked every institution of our government. They have attacked the president, the executive branch. They have attacked the judicial branch. They say they don't have time for courts. They have attacked the United States Senate repeatedly. It's about time we bring this power trip in for a landing. President Trump is a man of his word. He made promises to the American people, and he delivered over and over and over again. And they come here and say, with no evidence, spending the day complaining that they can't make their case, attacking a resolution that had 100% support in this body, and some of the people here supported it at the time. It's a farce. and it should end. Mr. Nadler, you owe an apology to the President of the United States and his family. You owe an apology to the Senate. But most of all, you owe an apology to the American people.
Then Jerry Nadler returned again, not the least credible, that would be Adam Schiff, but the least competent of the 7 House Democrats who are managers. Jerry Nadler responded, cut 27.
It is beyond belief that the president claims monarchical powers. I can do whatever I want under Article 2, says he, and then acts on that. Defies everything. Defies the law to withhold aid from Ukraine. Defies the law in a dozen different directions all the time. And lies about it all the time. And says to Mrs. Cipollone here to lie about it.
Again, he used the lie word. Then the Chief Justice broke in. Cut number 28.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body. One reason it has earned that title is because its members avoid speaking in a manner and using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. In the 1905 Swain trial, a senator objected when one of the managers used the word pettifogging, and the presiding officer said the word ought not to have been used. I don't think we need to aspire to that high a standard, but I do think those addressing the Senate should remember where they are.
That was addressed, though he said to both sides, to Mr. Nadler's accusation of lying. Pat Cipollone is the White House counsel. This is from his opening statement, cut number 12.
It's too much to listen to almost. The hypocrisy of the whole thing. And what are the stakes? What are the stakes? There's an election in almost 9 months. Months from now, there's going to be an election. Senators in this body the last time had very wise words. They echoed the words of our founders. A partisan impeachment is like stealing an election. And that's exactly what we have. We have, talk about the framers' worst nightmare. It's a partisan impeachment that they've delivered to your doorstep in an election year. Some of you are upset because you should be in Iowa right now. But instead we're here, and they're not ready to go. And it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And the American people won't stand for it, I'll tell you that right now. They're not here to steal one election, they're here to steal 2 elections. It's buried in the small print of their ridiculous articles of impeachment. They want to remove the President Trump from the ballot. They won't tell you that. They don't have the guts to say it directly, but that's exactly what they're here to do. They're asking the Senate to attack one of the most sacred rights we have as Americans, the right to choose our president. In an election year, it's never been done before. It shouldn't be done before. Now, the reason it's never been done is because no one ever thought that it would be a good idea for our country, for our children, for our grandchildren, to try to remove a president from a ballot, to deny the American people the right to vote based on a fraudulent investigation conducted in secret with no rights. Well, I could go on and on, but my point is very simple. It's long past time that we start this so we can end this ridiculous charade and go have an election. Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice.
And indeed, we will get started today, finally, after Months and months of obstruction by Democrats of due process. They finally get to make their case, which they made surreptitiously yesterday. It falls flat on its face. Nobody believes it who isn't a partisan Democrat. It's a foregone conclusion the president will be acquitted, probably with all 53 Republican votes. Maybe the votes of Doug Jones, Joe Manchin, and other sane Democrats. We will see. But I got a little bit more for you after the break, Graham. We'll check on the markets. The coronavirus comes to the United States. Only one case in Washington State. I'll update you on that here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. The fisticuffs are on in the Senate. Didn't go well for the Democrats yesterday. They tell themselves on Twitter how great they are, and the rest of the country just says, what are they doing? Why is this craziness happening? Meanwhile, what do markets think? Brought to you by our friends at andrewandtodd.com. Andrew DeRay, Todd Avakian. They are real estate lenders. andrewandtodd.com or with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you the money that you need to buy a house or to refinance a house or to, in other ways, take advantage of the home you own or to buy a rental or to buy a vacation home. Or if you would like to help your son or daughter get into the real estate market when rates are this low and 30-year loans are ridiculously inexpensive right now, they will thank you for 30 years. Every month they pay their mortgage for 30 years. They'll say, thank you, Mom and Dad or Grandma and Grandpa for helping me get in. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are where you begin. Go to andrewandtodd.com, answer a couple of questions, or call them. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. You can trust them. They're great people. The 10-year Treasury is down to 1.77% this morning. That is not the rate you get on a loan, but it is the rate on which all loans are based eventually. That means all the mortgage rates remain in the threes. It had gotten up to 1.85, but it's down another, almost full 0.1% from 2 weeks ago. And I think that's because money's pouring into the country as a result of weakness overseas. But this morning's market report brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. Yesterday, Dow was down 152, the NASDAQ off 18, the S&P off 8. This morning, everything is looking rosy. The S&P is up 13, the NASDAQ is up 64, the Dow is up 93 points in the pre-market trading, which is pretty remarkable. Amazon, which is my proxy for the tech sector, which leads America, is up to $1,903 a share. In pre-market trading, that's up $11 after gaining $27 yesterday. They report earnings next week. A couple of people made big option bets on Amazon overnight. The market took note of that. So it's a great day to get a loan. andrewandtodd.com. It's also a great day if you're behind on your taxes. I always try and remind people about this time of the day. If you're up all night worrying about the fact you didn't file your quarterly statement on January 15, didn't make your quarterly payment, If you're behind in your taxes, I got someone for you, Perry Cronin. Terrific man. Axiom Tax Resolution. One of my listeners became a client of Perry's and called him and said, I really like you. I just like talking to you. Listen to me. If you owe more than $10,000 in federal taxes and you're ready to find out how Perry can help you get relief from the IRS, call Perry Cronin today. Talk to Axiom. One conversation with Perry could change everything. Call him at 844-8-TAX-PRO. 844-8-TAX-PRO. Or contact Axiom Tax Resolution online at axtaxhelp.com. That's axtaxhelp.com. I was having you listen to Pat Cipollone make his opening statement from yesterday's impeachment. He's the White House counsel, the president's lead lawyer. I want you to hear this part too, cut number 13.
So the idea that they would come here and lecture the Senate. By the way, I was surprised to hear that. Did you realize you're on trial? Mr. Nadler's putting you on trial. Everybody's on trial except for them. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They said in their brief, we have overwhelming evidence, and they're afraid to make their case. Think about it. Think about it. It's common sense. Overwhelming evidence to impeach the President of the United States. And then they come here on the first day and they say, you know what? We need some more evidence. Now, let me tell you something.
This is the hole in the House manager's donut. In the Clinton impeachment, witnesses did get called to elaborate on testimony previously given. Here, the House Democrats admitted they don't have the right witnesses. They don't have the right evidence. They need more witnesses and more evidence because they ain't got enough to convict. That's unprecedented. It should be turned down. They should have these articles dismissed quickly. It is damaging the president, as I argue. The presidency, not Donald Trump, doesn't hurt him. It actually helps him. It is damaging the presidency, as I argue in a Washington Post column on the landing page of the Post, which I encourage you to go to read. I'm coming right back with Senator Mike Braun. Stay tuned. What? Welcome back, America. I think Mike Gallagher, congressman from Wisconsin, was singing this at halftime. Who'll stop the rain? This past Sunday, it was 27-0. The Packers were downtrodden, beaten. I turned it off. Most of America turned it off. But I know Mike Gallagher held a candle aloft in the rain of Green Bay, trying to hope against hope that something would happen. And, of course, we all know that now the Packers and the Browns are in exactly the same space, looking forward to next year. Mike, I'm really sorry.
You know, Hugh, the story that you media journalists have refused to cover is that Aaron Jones' Twitter account got hacked earlier in the week, likely by the Chinese Communist Party, and therefore sabotaged the locker room. So the fix was in. This was like the whistleblower trying to remove Trump the week after the election. No one's covering this. This is a huge asterisk underneath the win for the Niners. The whole thing needs to be blown up.
I got to ask you, did you watch the whole thing? Did you hang in there after 27-0?
I did. We had a 99.7% chance of losing. And yet in the second half, when we finally scored a touchdown, I started to talk myself into a comeback, which never emerged. That was just the worst performance that I've seen the Packers put out there in a long time, perhaps in my entire lifetime. So,
and it's so sad that the sun is setting in Green Bay and rising in Cleveland, and it's just, I feel bad for you. I really do. The baton is passed. But Representative Gallagher, let's get to some important stuff. I mean, we can talk about aging quarterbacks and dying franchises, but let's not. Let's talk about looking forward. What did you make of your colleagues from the House yesterday embarrassing the House by demanding that an impeachment that was rushed now be repaired with new witnesses and new evidence?
Well, I confess I didn't watch it in real time. I've watched the recap. I had meetings all day yesterday. But I do think there's just a fundamental logical imbalance in all of this. In other words, by saying that you cannot have a fair trial in the Senate unless you subpoena these documents, unless you hear additional witnesses, you are admitting against interest that the process in the House was not fulsome, that it did not take the time necessary to interview enough witnesses to allow the courts to adjudicate on whether certain witnesses should be allowed to testify. And I think it puts the House managers in this impossible position, trying to defend their rush process while also saying that we can't have a fair process unless we effectively reopen the investigation. And so I believe the process outlined by Leader McConnell is a fair one. I find it ironic that Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff would suggest the opposite after having run a hyper-partisan impeachment through the House. But then again, I could be biased given the fact that the Senate rules allow for senators to only drink water and milk, which is hopefully coming from America's Dairyland, Wisconsin. So good for Wisconsin that they have to drink milk.
Well, I do want to play for you, since you remember the House. Chairman Nadler, late last night, well after midnight, made two comments which really crossed the line. The Chief Justice rebuked him and the president's lawyers, although the president's lawyers did not use this language. Here's Chairman Nadler, cut 25.
Think about what they're asking. I said it. They didn't.
Cut 25.
I am struck by what we have heard from the President's counsel so far tonight. They complain about process, but they do not seriously contest any of the allegations against the President. They insist that the President has done nothing wrong, but they refuse to allow the evidence and hear from the witnesses. They will not permit the American people to hear from the witnesses. And they lie, and lie, and lie, and lie. And the President sometimes relies on a theory of absolute immunity.
Right there. Let's go cut down to cut 27 next. Jerry Nadler, cut 27.
Beyond belief that the President claims monarchical powers. I can do whatever I want under Article 2, says he, and then acts on that. Defies everything. Defies the law to withhold aid from Ukraine. Defies the law in a dozen different directions. All the time, and lies about it all the time, and says to Mrs. Cipollone here to lie about it.
Lying again. And then the Chief Justice said this, Mike Gallagher, cut number 28 for the benefit of people who went to bed and are just getting up now.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body. One reason it has earned that title is because its members avoid speaking in a manner and using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. In the 1905 Swain trial, a senator objected when one of the managers used the word pettifogging, and the presiding officer said the word ought not to have been used. I don't think we need to aspire to that high a standard, but I do think those addressing the Senate should remember where they are.
What do you make of those first incendiary charges by Nadler and then that brushback pitch from the Chief Justice?
Well, I think pettifogging is a great word, and we should all strive to add it back into our lexicon. First of all, do people understand that the whole reason Schiff has assumed leadership of this entire process is because Chairman Nadler, who heads the Judiciary Committee, which should be running this whole process, not the Intelligence Committee, is not trusted by Pelosi. He is not competent enough to handle it himself, and therefore Schiff, who would never turn down an opportunity to be in front of a camera, has emerged as the leader of this whole process. And in that exchange, you have a demonstration as to why Nadler cannot be trusted with the process. I'm glad that the Chief Justice threw that brushback pitch. And for this argument that the administration is not being transparent or that somehow they're obstructing Congress, which I would remind everyone is not a thing, it's not a real crime. How about the fact that the administration released the full transcript of the call from the start? I mean, that is an exceptional amount of transparency as it pertains to this particular issue. And so all of this, I think, is an effort to distract from the fact that these are exceptionally weak impeachment articles. Speaker Pelosi has only succeeded in proving to the American people that she puts politics ahead of their interests. And I'm confident that the Senate will exonerate President Trump. But I do worry that we're opening up a Pandora's box going forward, where we're going to be in a state of perpetual impeachment. And one time, as soon as you set this precedent, it just opens up an opportunity for future Congresses to impeach presidents for very petty things, which I think would be the very definition of pettifogging.
Well tied back. In fact, I have a column at the Washington Post this morning which says the impeachification of politics is upon us, meaning that whenever there is a president who is faced by a opposition in the House that is partisan, the other party, that they're going to be impeached over policy differences. That's what's going to happen. And without evidence, so that they then go to the Senate and say that it can't be a fair trial unless they have new evidence. It's all done for politics. Do the people of Wisconsin, you were just back there weeks ago, what do they think of this charade?
I think this is a story for the D.C. media establishment and all the Beltway bandits. It's certainly not something that is on the minds of Wisconsinites anymore. It's not even in their top 5 issues. I mean, you do have sort of a committed movement on the left that wants to remove President Trump from office by any means necessary. But this is really, I think this is a loser politically for the other side. People in Wisconsin are more worried about, keeping their families safe, about, what we're doing to control healthcare costs, what the future of infrastructure is. And there's a whole host of issues that are getting ignored right now because of the obsession with impeachment. For example, Britain may be on the verge of making a disastrous decision as it pertains to the future of their internet and allowing companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party to build their 5G networks. We need to be sending the signal loud and clear that is not something we can do, but instead we're focusing excessively on impeachment. I haven't heard from anyone in Wisconsin, people in the middle and even center left, that thinks this is the top issue.
Now, Congressman, if I can quickly go to 2 things. I talked about them earlier with Admiral Stavridis. Number 1, the next carrier is going to be named for Dorie Miller, the enlisted man who was a hero in the West Virginia on Pearl Harbor Day in 1941. That's a grand decision. That's terrific. We also talked about Acting Secretary of the Navy Mollie and the new CNO making a dramatic announcement that the top line of the Navy budget has to go from $160 to $190 billion. What did you make of both events?
I love the idea of naming the carrier after Dorie Miller. He has an incredible story, not only the first carrier named after an African-American, but I just like the idea of naming it after an enlisted sailor. But we're going to need some consistency, right? So I think that should be the standard going forward. We should name it after, no kidding, Navy and Marine Corps heroes. And I love the idea of putting an emphasis on the enlisted sailors who really are the backbone of our Navy and certainly in the Marine Corps. The enlisted Corps is just the backbone of the Marine Corps. I have to give Secretary Mollie a ton of credit on your second question. He has really lit a fire under the congressional mandated goal of a 355-ship Navy. His initial SECNAV vector made clear his intention to get to 355 in 10 years. SECNAV Vector 6, I think, is the best document that's been written, making the succinct case for a 355-ship Navy. And I can't tell you how much that emphasis means to congressional sea power advocates like me, because we can't believe in the 355-ship Navy more than the Navy does and more than the Department of Defense does. But I do think Mollie, Gilday, and Commandant Berger are all going to have to – they all seem like they're on the same page now. They're going to have to make that case within the building to the top leadership of the Pentagon, because it's going to require the Navy to get a higher share of the budget. But if you look at the national security strategy and the national defense strategy, it is a sea power focused strategy. And therefore, I think you could make the strategic case for why the Navy Marine Corps team, and it needs to operate as a team, is worthy of a disproportionate share of the budget. So I give Mollie a ton of credit, and I think those of us in Congress who pay attention to this need to be echoing what he's saying in his SECNAV vectors.
Yeah, it is the most important discussion the Congress has, which is how much to spend and how to spend it on our defense. It's what the Constitution provides for the common defense is about. And of course, there are people in the Army, the Air Force, and now the Space Force who are going to say, no, you're going too far too fast. But that's the debate, isn't it, Mike Gallagher?
That is the debate. And I know, listen, there is a balance. You don't want to grow a hollow force in 10 years, because when you're building a ship, you're not just building the ship. You have to think about all the human beings that are on that ship that you got to pay for, that are very costly. They have to train effectively so they can operate that ship and keep it out on the ocean. But listen, I just feel like all these excuses are just that, an excuse to not build the fleet as quickly as possible. And if we wait 10 years, it's going to be too late. China's already going to kick us out beyond the first island chain, perhaps allow us to keep Hawaii, and we're going to wake up one day and we're not going to be the world's predominant power. That, Hugh, is completely unacceptable.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Follow him on Twitter at Rep Gallagher. He'll be back next year with more Green Bay Packer fantasies, but in the meantime, he'll help us get the Navy built. Thank you, Congressman. Time for me to remind you, I am in the ReliefFactor.com studio, and I am holding a bag of ReliefFactor.com, which you can see on Univision over at HughHewitt.com if you want to watch the studio presentation each morning, or at Town Hall TV for all the Salem hosts. But ReliefFactor.com is something I take in the first hour of every day's show. And I remind you right now, because a lot of you are going out on your commute in the Central Time and the Rocky Time, even a few of you poor souls are at 4:45 in the morning heading out on the West Coast to drive a long way to your commute, and that commute just wrecks your back, wrecks your knees, wrecks your ankles. Well, that's where Relief Factor comes in. Keep yourself healthy. Keep yourself smiling as you listen to me as you drive to work. ReliefFactor.com has 4 pills in each packet. You take it every morning before you leave. Turn around, go back in and get it if you did not take it, like I did in the first hour. Hi, Karen Kirkham and Resveratrol Omega. Together, they make it easier for you to get what you need to get done, to exercise as you have to, and to just grow another day older without feeling bad about it. It is support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that accompany exercise, aging, and commuting, and you ought to be taking it. Senator Mike Braun of Indiana is next on The Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, standing by for Senator Mike Braun of Indiana. I want to play for you Jerry Nadler last night. Cut number 25, Jerry Nadler, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, cut number 25.
I am struck by what we have heard from the President's counsel so far tonight. They complain about process, but they do not seriously contest any of the allegations against the President. They insist that the President has done nothing wrong, but they refuse to allow the evidence and hear from the witnesses. They will not permit the American people to hear from the witnesses. And they lie, and lie, and lie, and lie. And the President sometimes relies on a theory of absolute immunity.
Right there, they lie, they lie, they lie. I'm joined now by Senator Mike Braun of Indiana. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Hugh.
What did you make of the deportment of Chairman Nadler last night when he accused the President's counsel of lying?
Well, it's ironic because just watching some of the rehash of it, calling the president a blustery carnival barker, maybe he was thinking of himself last night. So I thought that was sad. I think it goes, Hugh, into how deep the dislike and/or hatred of the man is. It shows the origins going way back. It's playing itself out all along. I read your piece about the gravity of how this plays into the future when it comes to impeachments, the presidency, executive privilege, and all that. And I think those are points that are going to come out once we get further into the trial. But I think what it showed yesterday, they got a weak case. They're litigating this to the public about the elections coming up, knowing that they're not going to win on the merits. And I think all of this played out, and especially with a guy like Jerry Nadler, to where it showed how deep that resentment is. So, and I think whenever you look at something like this, you got to look at the roots, the origins, and they're always talking about the analogy to a trial. Of course, all of that would make that point of view questionable if you're trying to call this a parallel to a trial, and this is a political process with elements of a trial. So here we are, all dressed up. It was 13 hours, and we made it through it. And lucky I do go to bed late and get up early, and got up today without an alarm clock, so I'm ready to go again.
I'm impressed. Now, let me ask you, Senator, how long is this going to go on?
Well, the two things we had to do in terms of the ground rules of it, and it would have been yesterday, was to agree to submitting the evidence from the House inquiry into the record, and to go from a couple days to 3. And I thought those were all reasonable to set the stage. They are going to, Hugh, all along the way, claim that the process isn't fair, that we're rushing it, and all that kind of stuff, because they're really playing to the public. And I don't think it's about impeachment anymore, because I think they know where the case is and that they're going to lose that. They're now playing to the elections, especially the Senate, to try to win that and use all of this and the clips from it to weigh in on 4 or 5 races. I think that's clear.
Now, Senator Braun, it seemed to me in their admission that they must have new witnesses and they must have new evidence. Neither witnesses nor evidence that appeared either before the House Intelligence Committee or the House Judiciary Committee. They admitted they do not have enough evidence to convict the president. Is that your conclusion?
There's no doubt about it. And I think you can, if you want to have a recent kind of reference, you look at the Cavanaugh hearings. When they knew that their case wasn't going to make it, that's when they were going to delay and try to win it through some type of manipulation of the public's perception of it. 2 issues. People can smell that, and when you're pushing a weak argument and all you're counting on is maybe some new piece of information, that was what they did with Cavanaugh. And I think there's a lot of similarity. In this case, it's playing out on even a larger stage, and I think the American public is too sharp. They see through it. I think this is going to backfire on them in the same way impeachment and the election was starting to get litigated here a month ago, and some of the polls that you see in the swing states that are turning not only against impeachment, but also show President Trump winning comfortably outside the margin of error. I think they risk that with what they're doing here.
Last question, Senator Braun. When you sit there for these hours after hours after hours, how focused can you stay when they keep repeating the same thing, which is, we don't have a case, we need more witnesses? I mean, how focused is that?
Well, it is tough to do, although once you get into something, Hugh, you always learn what your latitude is, what your escape valves are. And it tickled me when they were talking about if any senator speaks, you could risk imprisonment.
Huh.
And I looked around to see how long somebody would push the envelope, and it's like anything, nothing is ever verbatim. As it drug on, you could tell people were breaching that general guideline, and you could get up, you could leave the floor, go to the cloakroom, and people will find their way to get through it. But we need to know this is serious. You are right; this has long-term implications, and we're seeing it all on TV. So.
Thank you for reading the Washington Post column, Senator Braun. I hope you send it around to your colleagues in the GOP caucus and hang in there. This thing is a nightmare for the future, but it is a burden on the present. Thank you, Senator Mike Braun of Indiana. I'll be right back. Hour number 3 ahead, America. Stay with me. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings from a very cold beltway this morning, as it has been all week in the ReliefFactor.com studios. I am Hugh Hewitt, joined as we begin hour 3 by Peter Baker of the New York Times. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I am cold. The studio is cold. I can't keep it out their windows. Tell me about where you spent yesterday.
Well, I spent it at our bureau because, in fact, I was working on the story with the president being in Davos and the split screen kind of nature of the day. Here you had the president on the international stage, even as he was on trial back at home.
Now, I watch it on and off. Nobody could have watched the whole thing except poor Mike Braun, who was just on, said it was, you learn you can stretch the rules, you can get up and walk around, you can whisper and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, Mike Braun said they don't have the evidence, they don't have the witnesses, there isn't any there. I don't think they moved a vote yesterday. I think this is going to be a straight 53 or 55 votes for acquittal. What do you guess, Peter Baker?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one thing about Susan Collins, you can't really know where she's going to end up. Obviously, the one everybody's focusing the most on. A handful of other Republican senators possibly on the fence in some way or another, probably not. A couple of Democrats might be as well. So, in the end, the outcome doesn't seem to be in doubt at this point. Obviously, you would need to get to 67 to actually convict. Nobody thinks that's going to happen. So the only question is we're left with is, as you say, kind of the parlor game of, which party breaks with a few of its mavericks to allow somebody to say it was, quote, bipartisan.
And it is to me a silly exercise, but one that's dangerous. I wrote in the Washington Post today about the precedent this is setting for the impeachification of politics down the road. Whenever a president of one party is confronted by a House majority of another party, the temptation to repeat what we are seeing will be strong. But then it collapsed last night late. Were you up for Jerry Nadler's descent into liar, 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 pants on fire? Did you see that?
I was there. I was there for the lawyer's response and for the Chief Justice's scolding, yes.
It was the most interesting moment of a long day. Do you agree with me on that?
It was. I think it sort of encapsulated it a lot. Obviously, both sides, I think, by that point, were a little tired. Clearly, they do not like each other very much. This is not one of those courtroom situations where you have lawyers on the other side respecting their opponents, if you will. I think there's a lot of animus, obviously, at this point between the president's legal team and the House manager. You saw that play out. The Chief Justice thought that both sides, he said, had gone a little too far, tried to rein them in a little bit. The only thing that the Chief Justice really did all day yesterday, other than to simply preside in a ministerial fashion, very interesting to watch.
Let me clue in for those just joining us. This is Chairman Nadler late last night, about 12:30 a.m., cut number 25.
I am struck by what we have heard from the President's counsel so far tonight. They complain about process, but they do not seriously contest any of the allegations against the President. They insist that the President has done nothing wrong, but they refuse to allow the evidence and hear from the witnesses. They will not permit the American people to hear from the witnesses. And they lie, and lie, and lie, and lie.
Stop right there. Then Pat Cipollone delivers a demand that Nadler apologize. Nadler responds, cut number 27.
It is beyond belief that the President claims monarchical powers. I can do whatever I want under Article 2, says he, and then acts on that. Defies everything. Defies the law to withhold aid from Ukraine. Defies the law in a dozen different directions all the time. And lies about it all the time. And says to Mrs. Cipollone here to lie about it.
So he just accused the President and Cipollone of lying, and the Chief Justice jumps in at that point, cut number 28.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body. One reason it has earned that title is because its members avoid speaking in a manner and using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. In the 1905 Swain trial, a senator objected when one of the managers used the word pettifogging, and the presiding officer said the word ought not to have been used. I don't think we need to aspire to that high a standard, but I do think those addressing the Senate should remember where they are.
Now, Peter Baker, I know he said both sides. He didn't mean both sides. He meant Jerry Nadler. And I don't think there's any way.
I disagree with that. I disagree
ahead.
with that. I disagree with that. I think that the White House team was fully vituperative. You obviously played Nadler's clips, and that's fine. But, I think that Cipollone was getting up there, was very, very sharp in his response. In fact, he had been sharp earlier in the day, pretty openly disdainful of the other side. I thought both sides in this case, I think the Chief Justice had it right on. He was absolutely right that both sides were in the line that he was trying to draw of a civil discourse there.
This is why I disagree. He intervened after the use of the term liar, which I believe Senate parliamentarian. I would have to check with one. I've got a friend who is a veteran, but that's one that can be taken down. You can't accuse the other side of being a liar. You can be vociferous, you can be hypercharged, but it was only after Nadler descended to liar, liar of the president and Cipollone, a personal attack, not an argument, but a personal attack, Peter. I think that's what, and the Chief Justice is obliged to remain a presiding figure without his side in it, so I think he just called them both in, but it was to me, to Nadler. Now, let me go to the substance. I watched this on Twitter yesterday. I watched it on TV. There are two worlds. I told someone last night at dinner, it's like you were watching it from Mars or from Venus. The Republicans think it was a route for the president. The Democrats think it was a route for Adam Schiff. Are we condemned to a world in which there are two outposts that see different things?
Oh, yeah. We've been in that outpost for a while there, Hugh. I think that's definitely where Washington is these days. Everybody sees things through their tribal lens. Everybody sees things through their own, their own party's interests. The one thing that is really striking about watching this trial, having covered the last one 21 years ago, is if you close your eyes and you don't actually look at, whether it's R or D after their names, you'll be hearing a lot of the same arguments, except everybody just flip sides. 21 years ago, it was the Republicans talking about the rule of law, the need for accountability for a president. The Democrats were complaining about partisan witch hunts and a coup d'etat. Open your eyes today, it's the exact opposite. Everybody in Washington, takes the, quote, principal position, unquote, that favors their side. And that's what you see, I think, particularly in the contrast between today and 21 years ago.
Okay, Peter, I got to push back a little bit because 21 years ago, I was in favor of the conviction of Bill Clinton because he lied under oath, which is a crime. It's perjury. I considered it a high crime and misdemeanor. And while you do not need to have a crime to have an article of impeachment, we have never before seen either Article 1 and certainly not Article 2. Article 2 is so out there, the president can't assert his privileges as to, I think, defy defense. So I think there is a substantive difference, and I think there's a reason you can be for Clinton and not be for the impeachment of Trump. But I don't think there's a reason you can be for the impeachment of Trump and not have supported the impeachment of Clinton. It works in one direction, it doesn't work in the other. Your response?
Well, I think this is what I'm talking about. In fact, everybody, again, sees things through their lens, and that's fine. 21 years ago, Ken Starr sent a report to the Congress and said, in fact, it is impeachable for a president to unlawfully use privileges to block an investigation. That's what the House is saying Trump did this time. We can argue
But they didn't impeach him on that, right, Peter? Ken Starr said that, but that was not an article of impeachment.
It was passed out by the House Judiciary Committee. Absolutely. It did not get voted on the floor. On the floor, they decided not to go with it.
That's what I mean. It did not go to the Senate.
But guess who Ken Starr represents today?
I know, but the point being...
Wait a second. He represents the President of the United States and says you can't be impeached for asserting privileges. In fact, he didn't actually assert the privileges, but just talked about asserting the privileges.
So we'd have to ask Ken why he changed his point of view. But the precedent...
My point is that everybody's changing their point of view depending on where they sit. The Democrats
but no, that's not...
Wait a second. The Democrats said you can't have partisan impeachment. If you have a partisan impeachment, it won't be legitimate. Guess what? They had a partisan impeachment. Everybody in this town, and we see this again and again, but this has crystallized it very, very strongly for me. Everybody in this town takes positions that benefit their side.
Peter, that's not accurate. 21 years ago, the House rejected the equivalent of Article 2, which came out. And I would have opposed Article 2 because the authority of the executive branch is absolute to assert its privileges. And so it is not inconsistent with then and now to be saying that Article 2 now is deficient. If you said that Ken Starr has something to explain, and maybe he'll come on and explain that, but it is not inconsistent in the way I think you're suggesting it. There's a principled position here.
Keep in mind, the vast majority of Republicans 21 years ago voted for that article. You're right, it got voted down because Democrats voted unanimously against it, and a handful of Republicans joined them. But most Republicans, and today, of course, most Republicans have taken the opposite position. So Democrats and Republicans, it's very convenient for them to take the positions that they take when it benefits the president of their party the way they want to.
There are some people doing that, but I am saying there is a constitutional basis that differentiates them, which I believe that we'd all be well advised to stand very focused on, which is what we see now, we have never seen before. An impeachment without a crime. A crime is not necessary, but we've never seen one before without it, and we've never seen Article 2 in any shape or form. Peter Baker, follow him on Twitter at Peter Baker NYT. Follow me to the next segment, 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234, connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Time for you to weigh in. Alan in Kingston, Pennsylvania. What do you think, Alan?
Hello, Hugh. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I've been following a lot of this stuff. I follow you. I'm a little disappointed in you. I'm going to tell you why. I don't understand why all these good Christian people like yourself and Pompeo and all the others have such a bond with a somewhat amoral president. And my theory is you have a hidden agenda, and that agenda is that through Donald Trump, if he's in office 4 more years, that is your ticket to wiping out Roe versus Wade. And I think that's your real agenda behind supporting Donald Trump. And I'd like to hear your comment.
Well, thank you, Alan, for calling. I appreciate that you listen. No, that's not my agenda. My agenda is military readiness and spending and the federal judiciary, thus the defense of the Constitution writ large, of which the overturning not of Roe, but the cabining at least of Casey would be a part. But I am primarily concerned with religious liberty. And I've said that like 1,000 times. So if you think it's a hidden agenda to say 1,000 times, I believe in military spending and federal judges, and therefore I support Donald Trump, you could have that hidden agenda. But if you listen every morning, Alan, you'll hear it. Thanks for the call. Chuck, Indianapolis, Indiana. What do you say, Chuck?
Hey, wow, some people really do hate low unemployment, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they don't want us to be at 3.5%.
They hate it when America's strong. Anyhow, look, I'll try to make this quick. Right after World War II, we know there was a movement to socialize America. They brought in the social security system. They brought in the welfare system. Government took over the schools, and on and on and on. Obama took that rope and tried to push us into socialized medicine and try to get us closer and closer to the edge. Hillary was supposed to take that rope and carry us the rest of the way across the line. What happened is Donald Trump came along. He's eased all these regulations. He's pretty much undone most of everything Obama did. That's why they're upset. I don't think they hate Trump. I think they hate what he's doing. Because after 8 years of trying to get us more socialized, he's undoing all of that. It's like...
That's an excellent... Look, that goes to what Mike Braun said last hour, your senator. Go to the root. Why do they hate him so much? And they hate him so much because he's winning. It's 3.5% unemployment. The military is rebuilt. Soleimani is dead. Al-Baghdadi is dead. ISIS is destroyed. China is at the bargaining table. And we've got 2 Supreme Court justices, 50 appeals court justices, and 133 district court judges. That's why they hate him. Thank you, Chuck. Brian, Columbus, Ohio. What do you say, Brian?
Mr. Hewitt, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I listen when I can in the mornings, and you're always talking about, thankfully so, you're always talking about the Navy and the aircraft carriers and the different ways of building the budget to take care of the barbarians at the gate. But I wanted to let you know that when I listen to you, I've always viewed your opinion as like a philosophical aircraft carrier for within our country. Because when we focus on the barbarians at the gates, it's my opinion that the barbarians are already here and will be taken down from within long before we'll be taken down from without. And if you just look at what's going on in the impeachment sham, you look at, as your last caller just said, about being dragged towards socialism, the barbarians are here, brother. They're already
Well, that's why I write for the Washington Post today. The most important thing for the senators, Brian, is that they focus on the long-term damage being done to the presidency, because we need a strong executive to make sure that that overrunning doesn't occur. Thank you, my friend. Let me get to Winchester, Virginia quickly, and Mark, 1-800-520-1233 if you want to join the conversation. Mark, what did you make of yesterday?
I thought it was the House representative, especially Adam Hitler Schiff.
No, stop. We don't call anyone Hitler. Goodbye. Can't do it. Won't accept it. Never going to happen. He's not Hitler. He's wrong. He's rotten. He's not evil. And so please don't ever do that to me. We don't do that. We do not do that. There's no need to do that. That is not America. They're just wrong. They are our adversaries. They are not our enemies. And the Goodwin rule is never, Goodwin's law is never invoked on the Hewitt Show. 1-800-520-1234. What'd you make of yesterday, America? It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. The hanging judge, Chief Justice John Roberts, blasting away at both sides last night, but I think he was really aiming at Jerry Nadler for calling Pat Cipollone and the president liars. It descended into chaos last night, but more chaos ahead. The president of the United States is tweeting. The president retweeted a tweet by Jenna Ellis. The Democrats are trying to overthrow our country and our rule of law. And then, this is a shocking turn of events, wrote Jenna Ellis, and the president retweeted it saying, big story, hope fake news covers it. What's the big story? Politico has a story that Adam Schiff mischaracterized a piece of the Lev Parnas evidence from last week. I would lead with this if I were the House, if I were the president's lawyers in the Senate today. I'd just stand up and read the Politico piece. Say, Mr. Schiff, how can we believe anything you say? You made up the president's speech at the Intel Committee. Now you've made up evidence. How can we believe? You have no credibility. Please dismiss yourself. And if there is a witness called, you're our first witness. You are a fact witness. We're putting you under oath. You're a fact witness. If any witnesses are called, you go first. Whistleblower goes second. Hunter Biden goes third. You know, if they go that way, it could go a lot. Meanwhile, the president has other tweets as well this morning because I guess there's just not much going on in Davos this morning. The president of the United States has said that, he's retweeted Mark Levin saying Adam Schiff lies again. The great one is on it. Retweeted Mark Levin saying, will the House farce now turn into the Senate farce? The president also said they are taking the nomination away from Bernie for a second time. Rigged. I got to tell you, I voted for Bernie yesterday. Voted by excused absentee in Virginia yesterday. Voted for Bernie. And very proud of that. He really ought to be their nominee. A choice, not an echo. But they are going to try and manipulate. They screwed him. The president is absolutely right. The DNC screwed Bernie last time. They're going to try and do it again. But we go back to the impeachment. I want to hear from some of you. Camden Town, Missouri. Cliff. Hi, Cliff. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, good morning, Hugh. Absolutely
good morning.
Love your show. I'm a 6-month listener.
No, thank you.
You know, I found Alan's call very interesting and disgusting when he talked about how our president was amoral, but yet he's trying to stand up for something like abortion that's absolutely immoral.
Yep. And again, it's no secret. It's just no secret. The idea of having a secret agenda, it's no secret. I support Donald Trump for military spending and judges, regulatory reform, and economic growth. It's just no secret. Cliff, thank you, my friend. Scott, Minneapolis, Minnesota. How are you, Scott?
I'm great, Hugh. Hey, thanks for a great show. Say to respond to your question, you know, I think that I agree with your previous callers that what we're really seeing here is that the Democrats are just infuriated about Trump's derailing of their generational power grab. And, you know, he is fighting for freedom and liberty, and they are, you know, they're on a mission to have top-down control. They're just trying to get him out of the way. You know,
a lot of people believe that this trial is hurting Democrats. I believe that. The more people tune in and see Nadler and Schiff, the more they are not going to want these people in charge of the House next year. 1-800-520-1234. Let me do a pre-market report brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. If you've got a home, you should check on whether or not you can save money every month by refinancing it at these ridiculously low rates. The 10-year Treasury right now is at 1.78% this morning. That's not the rate you'll get on a refinanced loan, but you'll get a rate in the threes. You'll get money out if you need it for college to consolidate debt. If you want to buy a second home as an investment, you want a rental property to make a little money on, you want to take money out of the house that you've got that's appreciated. If you're a senior citizen, you want to just ease your cash flow, AndrewandTodd.com. They are lenders. They lend you the money with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, or you can call 888-888-1172. Yesterday, the Dow was down 152. The NASDAQ was off 18. S&P in the red by 8 and 0.83 points. But everything is green this morning. The S&P up 13. The NASDAQ up 63. Wow. And the Dow was up 79 in pre-market trading. Over at Amazon, my tech sector proxy, it soared $27 yesterday, and it's up another $8 this morning at 1,900. Some big bets were made by Amazon in the option market last night. People expecting their earnings to be released next week to be healthy. I don't know. I don't predict. I do own Amazon. I think it's great. But I also know I will predict you will get perfect service from andrewandtodd.com. A clear answer, good advice. You can trust them. Start at andrewandtodd.com. Answer a couple questions. They'll be back to you. Bill in Montrose, Pennsylvania. What do you think, Bill?
Oh, I think that we have to, as soon as we get Trump reelected, we need to start campaigning for Pence immediately because if these Dems get back in there, they're going to stop the fracking. I'm calling you from Gasland, Pennsylvania, man, and things are booming around here. And I'm just afraid if the Dems get back in there, that's going to end.
Are you a Steelers fan?
No.
Okay, thank God. I'll let you talk then. I was afraid you'd snuck in under the cover of being pro-Trump and talking about to do Steelers propaganda. Where's Montrose?
Catty corner. It's catty corner to Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Northeastern corner.
Oh, you're an Eagles fan. That's good. Okay, that's good. I didn't know that was Gasland. I thought Gasland was Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, actually, I've been a 49ers fan since I was stationed out there in the Navy 35 years ago.
We'll forgive you for that. That's not so long as you're not against the Browns, I can go with you. Thank you, my friend. Dan in Cleveland, Ohio. What do you think of Kevin Stefanski as our new head coach, Dan?
Excellent choice.
Agree. What's on your mind?
Okay, I just got it's kind of a curveball what we're talking about, but in regards to impeachment, how the vice president had to recuse himself from the Senate trial. Well, should the Speaker of the House have to recuse himself from anything involved with impeachment? Because I've heard other people say that if you get rid of President Trump, Vice President Pence, then she becomes president, where could she have ulterior motives to, like, pursuing impeachment, et cetera?
Well, the reason that the vice president is not presiding is that the Constitution explicitly provides, or it's right there in the text, that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court shall preside. And that's because of the conflict of interest in the original framing of the Constitution when the vice president and president were elected independent of each other. They were afraid that the vice president, if he presided, might have an interest in removing the president. So it's not a conflict of interest today the way that it was in the original republic. But no, she is not obliged to recuse herself. And the vice president hasn't recused himself. The Constitution provided for a different process. Happy to be here. Right. That's why I'm here. Thank you, my friend. Charlie, Massachusetts. What do you say, Charlie? 1-800-520-1234.
Good morning, Hugh. I listen to you every morning, and I thought today when you were talking with Peter Baker from the New York Times, it just underscored something that I understood about. I used to get the Daily Times delivered here to my house in Massachusetts for 35 years and read it and thought it was the straight-on story. And I quit about 3 years ago and just listen to you and read the Wall Street Journal and have nothing to do with the Times. And with Baker's response to what he saw yesterday as compared to what you present to us and what we read about yesterday, he just doesn't see things, and that newspaper just doesn't see things truthfully.
Well, they see things from a different planet on which we exist. All right, they exist on the planet New York Times. I exist on the planet Hugh Hewitt. But I try and talk to everyone and bring them to my planet. Not sure that the New York Times wants anyone to visit theirs. Thank you, my friend. Peter's a very good reporter. I'm going to talk to Nick Kristof for the next 3 days about his brand new book, which is very important. But I do think there's a fundamental just indifference to information that is inconsistent with their worldview. Not Peter so much as the readers of the New York Times. Let's go to Columbus and talk to John. John, have you been to Urban Meyer's new restaurant, the Pint House?
No, I haven't been to that yet. It's pretty close to my house. I should go. But
that's where I'm going the next
see.
time I'm in Columbus. I'm going to go to Urban Meyer's new restaurant. So that's a free shout out to the coach there. I've been looking at the picture of it, and when I get down to Columbus next with my buddies from 89.9, I got to go to the Pint House. John, what's on your mind?
Well, the whole thing, the way the Democrats have been running this thing, both in the House and now at the trial, it's sad because I think they understand the Constitution and the things that are coming out of their mouth. You know, they don't believe what they're saying. They know better. They understand. It's
just politics. They're just trying to hurt the president. It's all Schumer's. I think they lost Republicans last night. They lost the country early in the day. And then last night when Jerry Nadler lost his mind and started calling everyone a liar, that's when they may have lost Susan Collins last night. It is a replay of Kavanaugh, but it's worse. Thank you, John. By the way, the Washington Post column that I've written about this is posted on the front page. It's already got 1,300 comments. I'm sure they all support it. But Mike Braun, the senator, sua sponte, Carl from Pittsburgh, I want to explain this to Carl. Sua sponte, that's a soup. I just want Carl to understand that's a soup. So sua sponte soup, Carl. 1.3 thousand comments, 1.3K comments. You should go and read it at WashingtonPost.com. Heather in New York. How are you, Heather? You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good, Hugh. How are you? Two quick questions.
You bet.
First one is, I thought they weren't allowed to besmirch or call names on the floor of the Congress when you have Hakeem Jeffries calling him the Grand Wizard.
They should have taken him down for that. The Chief Justice intervened last night after Nadler lost his mind. In order to maintain impartiality, he suggested the rebuke was equitably distributed across the president's lawyers and the House managers, but it was Nadler who just lost it, and everybody knew he would. He's the worst. It's Adam Nadler and Five. That's the law firm of Schiff, Nadler and the Five. And Nadler is their worst representative. I wish they'd give him the microphone all day long. They lose votes every minute they realize, the American public realizes, he is the Democrats' choice to run the Judiciary Committee. Huh.
Next question. Why do they leave it up to Congress to do term limits? They're never going to change it.
Well, you have to get a constitutional amendment to change it. I don't spend any time on constitutional amendments because they're never going to happen. They're never going to happen. Not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Just never going to happen. Don't waste your time on it. Go to Donald Trump for president if you want to work on the reelect and get involved there. And I also want to say to my Northern Virginia audience and my Southern Virginia audience, if you don't think you're going to be able to vote on March 3rd, you can go and vote early right now. You can go and vote early right now. I also want to remind everyone, I had Mike Lindell on last week. The team at mypillow.com is grateful to all of you. They've got an amazing offer on their Giza Dream bed sheets right now, which I encourage you to go and check out at mypillow.com. Just use my code HUGH, H-U-G-H, to get the best promo deal out there. And I really, really recommend you get their towels. They're really great towels. I also want you to go and watch the Battle for America Sold. It's over at HughHewitt.com. I need you to go and watch it and tell people about it. It's Prager and Hewitt and Gallagher and Gorka, the War for America Soul, right at the top of HughHewitt.com. Watch it now. And get your relief factor. Get your relief factor. I took it in the first hour, reminded you about it twice more. You're getting into your car to go to work on the West Coast, 546. If you're going to work in the Senate this morning, if you're one of the 100, and I know you listen to me, I'm always amused that most of the United States Senate listens to this show. I know at least 2 justices listen to this show. I know lots of members of the House listen to this show. All of you should be at work already, but I'm giving you a little bit of a grace period, senators. But you should have taken your relief factor because you're going to be in that chair all day today, and you got to listen to Nadler and Schiff. You really need relieffactor.com. Really need relieffactor.com. Your back hurts, and it's going to get worse. Mollie Hemingway is next from the Federalist. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America, to a very cold beltway. I am Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. And if you would think I actually had a producer the way this show is set up today, last hour, Senator Braun said to me, if you want to have a recent kind of reference, you look at the Kavanaugh hearings. When the Democrats, knew their case wasn't going to make it, that's when they were going to delay and try and win it through some type of manipulation of the public's perception of it. The perfect person to comment on that is Mollie Hemingway, who, along with Carrie Severino, wrote Justice on Trial, the international bestseller about the Kavanaugh fiasco. She joins me. You, of course, see her on Fox News. She runs the Federalist. Good morning, Mollie.
It's great to be here with you.
Well, it's good to have you on. It was one of my New Year's resolutions to try and get you early in the morning a few times a month to talk to you about this. What do you make of Senator Braun making an explicit analogy between what is happening in the Senate and what happened to Justice Kavanaugh?
I think that you're not only seeing people see comparisons between or I should say, you're not only true that there are comparisons with the Kavanaugh confirmation. I think that both Republicans and Democrats themselves see these comparisons and are kind of laying out their game plan based on that. And one of the things that was so interesting about the Kavanaugh confirmation process is that it seemed to change Republican senators. They seemed to develop a bit of a spine or realize that there was some kind of operation going on and start to kind of combat it. I kind of see that a little bit with this impeachment situation. They realize that there's an operation going on. They are less surprised when there's a drip of information. They know that certain people are being targeted, and they kind of know how to withstand that pressure. But yes, it does seem to have some similarities.
Now, indeed, today in Politico, there is a story that Representative Schiff mischaracterized Lev Parnas evidence, which reminds me a lot of your book, Justice on Trial, on how everything was mischaracterized at every moment about Justice Kavanaugh. It's got to be, again, very revelatory to the new senators like Mitt Romney and deja vu to the old senators like Susan Collins that this is the playbook we saw a year and a half ago.
Well, and if you look at it, if you are trying to find comparisons, it would seem that the initial whistleblower was akin to the Chrissy Blasey Ford. You might disagree about the merits of the situation, but at least it was sort of within the realm of plausibility. You know, there was something legitimate that was worthy of being taken seriously. By the time you get to Julie Swetnick in the Kavanaugh confirmation, this is the person who claimed without evidence with her attorney, Michael Avenatti, that Brett Kavanaugh had led a secret double life as a leader of a gang rape cartel that strolled the streets of suburban Maryland. Lev Parnas is sort of akin to that. This is a guy that probably nobody should have been messing around with, Republican or Democrat. The quality of his evidence is really bad. And then you have Adam Schiff compounding the issue with his notorious difficulties of telling the truth. I do want to just make one point here that it is somewhat surprising to me that Democrats chose someone like Adam Schiff to lead their impeachment inquiry, given that this was a guy who falsely claimed on national television for many years that he had evidence that would come out at some point of treasonous collusion with Russia to steal the election. He said that he had evidence of Trump doing that. And of course, that wasn't true. When you have someone who kind of has this reputation for not telling the truth, as we saw again last night with this Politico story that he mischaracterized the so-called evidence he had from Lev Parnas, it just makes it easier for senators to dismiss him.
Mollie, I am calling them the Yosemite Sam Democrats. That is an illusion that some in my audience may not get. They may not be old enough. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Yosemite Sam, but yesterday they were shooting off in every direction. But if you strip it away, they need more evidence and new witnesses because they don't have enough evidence and they didn't bother to get the witnesses. Isn't that itself dispositive?
This is so interesting to watch yesterday's hearings where they just over and over again seem to be saying, our case isn't strong enough. We need more people. We need more evidence. It is completely at odds with their other claim that the evidence is overwhelming and that you could not do anything but vote to convict. But also, I think one error that they've made is not understanding that the Senate is a different place than the House. You heard Justice Roberts say this right at the end. Remember where you are. That kind of fiery grandstanding that works well in the House, it just doesn't work to convince senators. And when we wrote in the Kavanaugh book about how Democrats did not secure the votes that they needed from people like Susan Collins, Part of it was with the game playing that they were doing and how they were dishonest about how they were going about things and how that put these moderate senators on guard about what was being said. And last night, as you saw, they put these senators through this entire day of rigmarole. They were condemning them. They were yelling at them and calling them, frauds and complicit in a cover-up. It just was not the way that I think most people would recommend you play things in the Senate.
Mollie, Hemingway, I don't call Senator Romney a friend, but I know him pretty well. Worked with him closely. This is not the way to persuade Mitt Romney of anything. It is the last way to persuade him of anything.
Right, and it's not that he's not persuadable, but it just does not help someone like him who needs it to be at least seem to be legitimate what they're doing against President Trump.
Exactly. He's a man who knows his history, his Constitution, and temperamentally is, I believe, horrified by the tactics unveiled yesterday. Mollie Hemingway will look for you on a special report with Bret Baier. The book, which everyone ought to read, of course, Justice on Trial, is the parallel you need to know if you're going to understand what's going on. I'll be back tomorrow with more on the impeachment. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissima. Thank all of you for listening to this, The Hugh Hewitt Show.